said, our first class is with Ginny Breeland Sensei, who is currently a 6th Dan and co-dojo cho of Cotati Aikido. She has been training since 1978, first with Dr. Robert Morris Sensei and later with Tatoian Sensei and Hans Goto Shihan. She has been teaching since the mid-1990s and has taught in California, Florida, and Arizona. She has trained in Mexico and Japan and has also had the privilege to train at both Iwama and Hombu dojos in Japan. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah? Okay, good. Perfect. So thank you for having me, and I'm just thrilled to be here with all of you. It's just amazing. That last conversation was awesome. What a wonderful panel and so informative. We all need it. Obviously, we wanted to keep going.
We are really excited for your class today, so I'll hand it over to you.
Okay, so first I want to thank everybody for inviting me. Oh my God, the background, the people that do this thing, they're amazing people. They're movers and shakers and master networkers. And it's so hard to realize how much work goes into this kind of thing, especially bringing all the styles together. This is really, we're all one Aiki family, really. And we tend to forget that because we're all so parked where we need to be. So, or where we are. We plan to venture forward and see each other, but sometimes it doesn't happen. So this is exciting for me because I get to see all of you, and I'm learning so much already, and this is really tremendous. We're all one Aiki family going up the same mountain in different directions, but going to the same peak. And it's wonderful. Everybody's path is pertinent. So this is really great. So thanks. Should I start now or should I wait?
Oh no, please start, yes.
Okay, great. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna do an informal bow. So just to each other, to Sensei and to the Aiki family. Thank you. We'll just do a couple of little stretches so that we can just have a little bit of warm up just for the big muscles and stuff. So if you spread out, we're gonna stretch up. And then come forward and just let your spine hang and just relax. And then back up. And then down. And we'll go to the side. So feel the stretch all the way to your foot and out the heel of your hand. Other side, foot, heel of your hand. One more time. And the other side. Okay, now we're going to turn and we're going to stretch our gastrocnemius muscle, which is your calf muscle. Stretch that. And the other side, stretch. Then we're going to come into this stance and just rock back and forth. Good. Press to one side and stretch that. And elongate your spine. Any chance you get to elongate your spine, that's good. And other side, stretch. Very good. And we're going to stretch our tricep, which is a great muscle, is underneath here. Other side, stretch that other side. Good. Bring your arm across for your deltoid. And the other side. Very good. And then one last stretch up and down. Okay, very good. So we'll go on. I'm teaching about the sword and the concept of Riai. So my style is Iwama style, and I started training a long time ago. Back in 1978, I walked through the dojo, not because I wanted to. My sister sort of dragged me. My older sister got me into Aikido. It was her idea, not mine. I didn't see an amazing demonstration or read a book. So I went in because of her, and as life would have it, of course, she left and I stayed. And maybe that was mostly because I met my husband there too. But quite honestly, Aikido for me was more exercise. So I wasn't really sold on the concept because number one, I'm 5 foot tall and I weigh just over 100 pounds. And in Iwama style, you start with static form. There's no motion. You know, your partner just kind of grabs your wrist or your shoulder or both shoulders, and then you have to move from there. So Saito Sensei called that training to the hilt. And it's called kind of because it's the worst case scenario. So from there, you have to create motion somehow to take balance. And that's the first thing you have to do. And this is always hard because a lot of times my ukes were a foot taller than me and sometimes outweighed me by maybe 100 pounds even. So it wasn't unusual for me to run into a 6 foot tall, 180 pound man. And he would grab really hard. Sometimes it even was so hard that you felt like there was a tourniquet and the blood supply got cut off. So, but you had to learn how to move from your center. And there are certain things that I learned how to do eventually. And the biggest thing was the concept of Riai, which is the relationship between the sword and the jo and empty-handed technique. That was the only, well, one of the main things that taught me how to not be so confined to my physical self. Before that, it was all about how I couldn't do anything because I was too small, how it's not fair, blah, blah, blah. Some of you have maybe gone through that. So I had to change the mindset and then just decide to study it or leave. So I studied it, and I have to really thank my husband and my teacher, Goto Sensei, Shihan, who kept me there, because probably I would have left many times. So just wanted to show you some of that, what helped me. This is the stuff I have to do to be a bigger person and to feel like I'm a contender. So anyway, okay, so we start out in Iwama style with a good stance. So what I want you to do is just to stand in your hamni that you're familiar with, right? Back foot here, front foot here. We have our feet behind us more. Some people have it more like this. A beginner might have it like this at first, and then we migrate to the back here like this, okay? I want you to feel the structure of your lower body because your lower body does everything. The upper body is just there for the ride and holding integrity, but the lower body is the key. Our eyes see a lot of this. So it's a big distraction. This can be very subtle, so we don't tend to look there. So, but this is the driving force. So for your structure, what I want you to do is have your hamni, and I want you to push your big toe into the mat so you feel the ground, okay? Then after you have that established, go into your knee. And what I want you to think about is the inside part of your knee, not the outside. So there's an inside tension here so your knee doesn't flop. So the structure is solid, like somebody nailed it. Okay, then we go to the center. Solid, feels really good. You're building a structure here that's really strong. The other part now from here is to go into the tailbone. Tailbone anchors into the ground. Okay, so sometimes we have to tuck it a little bit, like so. Or other styles will press their pelvis, the hip bones into the ground and have a little bit of a different stance, but it's still solid. I tuck the tailbone in. Then the back heel in the ground. So we have this solid structure. It's triangular, and it just holds us. From here, right now, our hips are facing this direction. We can turn it to face you. Okay, so see, you can feel that distinction from here to here. And that's just a slight turn, but it's a powerful turn, okay? If our feet are out here, turn your hip, it's a little bit limited. You get some rotation, but there is definitely a limit. If you bring your foot a little more behind you, you have this, and you have a bigger rotation. And then some schools will even open the foot, get an extra rotation. Okay, so the hip, it's like this huge gear. If you open your foot up, you just want to be careful not to hurt the inside part of your knee. That's very vulnerable. So the hip turn is huge. And like Melissa Bell Sensei was saying, hips go first, like so. And when you have your sword, it's the same thing like she was doing with the jo. If you look, it looks like when you strike this way, your hips are arriving at the same time, but actually hips go first. So there's a little bit of a snap. And your hand, which is your sword blade, does the same. So hip, hip. You see the delay? Hopefully you do. So she had this kind of motion, hip, hip. And I'm trying to teach you cut, strike. All driven from here. Your brain has to go here, very hard, because our brains are part of here. I read an article about a matador, and that really honed it in. If you look at a matador, they're very posturally oriented, but the hips move first because they have their little red flag here where they have to move, and it's all about their hips. When I heard that description, my brain went, boom. Okay, so this is what we really want to know, is that your hips are the driving force of everything, okay? When we have a sword, so hopefully you have your sword with you, and we start out with a sword in Iwama style right away, just to orient you and get you familiar. Hand is at the very bottom here. It can be flush, and some people like to have the last finger half off. It depends on what you want to feel comfortable with. The other hand comes on top. There's space for one hand in the middle. Okay, and then your knuckles are on top. They're not to the side like a baseball bat. So on top. And when you raise the sword, there's this ringing motion, and it brings everything to the center. So when you raise up and you strike down, everything comes to the center. So let's just raise up, and a couple times at your own pace, just raise up and strike. A couple times, relax. Okay, that's good. So a couple things that happens. Number one, when we bring our foot back, this is our style in Iwama style, the hip goes back. It doesn't go way back, it goes as far back as it being like this with us. So the hip will come back to come forward, come back to come forward. The foot pulls back to come forward, okay? Back to come forward. We at first, in Iwama style, we encourage our students to touch their spine or align it so that you have a good sense of center and you don't waver off to one side or the other side. When we strike Shomen empty-handed, it starts from the center. It doesn't start from here and then go to the center. It always starts from the center, and we attack the same way. So it's a lot of precision involved there. And sometimes it gets really picky, but really it's actually great form, especially if you're doing a cover and strike. So oftentimes cover and strike will come off to the side, come off to the side, whereas it really should be aligned. So we're all about aligning in Iwama style, because that foundation and alignment is huge, okay? The other thing about the sword is it's a tremendous thing for me to put your brain on the tip. Okay, so it's all about the tip, not about this cutting edge, okay? Otherwise you're chopping. And you can chop really strong, but that tip needs to be alive, okay? And that's a hard thing to describe to students. My students will say, oh yeah, I understand that. But when they strike the sword, you can't really see that the tip is alive. And then one day they'll come to class and it will actually be alive. So put your brain on the tip and extend. So you should feel that tip being alive. So do a couple strikes and see how that feels. Great. Okay, so then when we strike with our empty hand, we raise up, same feeling. Your brain is on the tips of your fingertips, but actually your brain is over there. So when I strike my sword, I'm seeing the tip of my sword over there. And it's almost like the first tool you can use to feel extended ki. My students will say, when do you start feeling ki? And I often say it depends. But this is one tool you can use. It's sort of like your brain will map it the way it maps you when you sweep your deck with the broom. You know where the end of the broom is. Or when you hit with a hammer, you know where the end of the hammer is because your brain has mapped it. And so the brain will map the tip of the sword for you if you utilize it often enough and get one with your part of your body. So when you strike, this feels the same. So what I want you to do is strike a couple of times with your sword. Think about the tip. And then tuck your sword away. See the tip. Okay, try that a couple times and let me see how you look. Do it on your own. Looks good. Nice. Very good. So this feeling of oneness is what really helped me in Aikido. I'm one with my sword. So when I throw my partner this way, it's like I'm throwing all the way over there, and my arm is that long. Okay, so it's a very interesting thing about your sword hand. Your sword hand acts exactly like your sword. Okay, so when you raise your sword, you don't contract. This happens often. We tend to raise like this, where this is a contraction, as opposed to an expansion. See, so you want your motion to be expanded. You don't want it to come in like that, right? And the trick of it, quite honestly, is instead of picking the thumb towards you, the pinky goes away. So play with that. Okay, hold your sword out, your sword hand out, and bring your thumb towards you. You feel the contraction, and then now put your pinky away from you, shift your weight, and raise. You haven't lost your space. Raise. Good. Yes, that's exactly it. And when you have somebody grabbing your arm, this is when we lose our space. We start contracting. And it's a physiological reflex to contract. It happens to all of us until we mindfully try to remember to expand. So Sensei Molly Hale talked about a space around her, and I love that. That was beautiful. I also refer to the space around me. It's like a sphere. I will call this your sword space because this is the unimpingible area. No one's allowed in here unless I decide. So that way my extension is never sacrificed. And it also utilizes a leverage system, which is what your jo can help you do. So this is all about the sword right now. So it looks pretty good. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna kind of move our body a little bit. We're gonna raise up, tuck the sword back here, and then do a two-step and strike. Okay, raise up, tuck the the sword, and strike. Raise up and strike. Hopefully, when you land the back foot, the sword strikes. So that's the timing you want. You want when the back foot lands, the sword comes down. So raise up and strike. Raise up and strike. Yeah, good. That should ground you. And then that's what you want, is the strike grounds you and gives you commitment to emotion, okay? You raise up, 1, 2. And when you drop your weight for that strike, this is when you sort of intercept an oncoming attack. That dropping of your weight can affect your partner, okay? So I'm a cheater. I have a virtual uke today, and it's not really fair, I understand. But I live with my virtual uke. So what he's gonna do is he's going to strike yokumen at me, and I will, instead of doing a round connection, I will do more of a strike, raise up, strike. And what it does is it takes his balance more. Okay, on this side, raise up, strike. And he should be offset. And this is part of the sword system. You have your sword? This is actually part of the way we move our bodies with the sword as well. And it shows us how to intersect a cut or a strike towards us, okay? It's perfectly fine to do that yokomenuchi with a round grab, but if we don't sync with the roundness, it will tend to float up here. And everything needs to be grounded with this. So the sword will make you grounded because that strike is so committed, right? And so if he had the sword form here and he does a strike to my head, I can catch it this way. One more time, and hopefully harness it, okay? And if he puts the sword down, one last time, and we count. Okay, so this is what this does with this two-step, right? And then we can modify it, of course, 90 degrees, right? Instead of 180, we'll go 90. Okay, hopefully that helps you understand how the grounding happens. So when you have your sword, you address number one, posture. Your posture has to be correct. So if you're catching a hand or intercepting, you're not intercepting like this. You're actually intercepting with a straight back. So posture, alignment, grounding. Then center, extension, expansion, and decisive motion. All of that helps your taijutsu. Okay, so one last thing we'll do as well. Do you know what time it is? I'll show you a thrust. So when we thrust in Aikido, in Iwama style, we come off like so. So the sword flattens, so it's this way. Okay, and then we thrust. Thrust on one side, thrust on the other. Okay, it's usually step, step with the feet, step, step on the other side. So try that a couple times, thrusting forward and the other side. So try a few of those on your own and I'll take a look. That's it. Very good. In Iwama style, they let us know for sure that when you thrust, it's not in front, right? We are on one side of the sword. We thrust, we're on the other side. So the sword stays on line, our body moves around that center line. Thrust. Thrust. Two. Thrust. Okay, I don't know if that makes sense. Hopefully that does. When you do this empty-handed as well, body is on one side of your hand and the other side. So when you come, the hip moves back. And make sure that you think about that so that your body is not a target. If you're like this, there's a target here. So scoot it off to the side. Okay, other side. Scoot it off to the side. The interesting thing about the sword is wherever the blade goes, my hips respond. Okay, so even though this thrust may look like a straight strike, it's actually rotational. There's a half rotation that comes here, and the edge, the cutting edge is going this way, which makes this hip go back. So if this hip goes back, I come back to my regular form, comes forward. And guess what? If the sword goes this way, this hip goes back. So whatever happens to your sword blade happens to your hips. So play with that. If the sword blade goes this way, this hip tucks, come back. If the sword blade goes that way, this hip goes back. So feel that? This side, this side, this side, this side. Okay, it's a very interesting form, and it gives you an awareness to your hips. These are huge gears. This is a small gear. It's a kind of a refined gear. It moves in accordance to this. Okay, and if you can coordinate that, it's tremendously effective. The piece here, I have a virtual uke again, and he holds two hands. So if I try to pull, this is hard because he's bigger than me, right? But what I'm going to do is I'm going to extend, and my sword blade is down right now, and I'm going to turn it with a thrust, and it's out. So he's off balance, and I'm going to keep my form here. I'm going to raise, and then I'm going to tuck my hip in. And when I shift my weight, he's going to fall. So I'm trying not to make him fall, because he'll fall on the fireplace. So, so what I want you to do is, when we thrust, we step and we raise, and we shift. Okay, that's all sword. Thrust, shift, thrust. Okay, very interesting stuff. Hopefully you can apply it in your training so that you can feel the sword, because the sword makes you big. It expands you, enlarges you, and it actually helps you be a contender to the bigger person that you might be intimidated by. So I'm not sure how much time I have left. Can some of you let me know?
You have about 2 more minutes, and then we could go into questions.
Perfect. So that's it, pretty much. Hopefully some of it looked clear to you. Play with it. Yeah, the sword is amazing. The sword will show you how to be decisive, how to fix your posture, commit with your center, your grounding, your extension, your expansion. It's been a huge tool for me, and I need it because it was very difficult to feel like I was too small to do anything, and that stayed with me probably too long before I had to change my mindset. And now it's just like a tool I want to give to everybody because it helped me. And if it helps your Aikido, it helps your Taijutsu, helps your mindset, it's for you. Okay, so let's go ahead and do our bow out to each other. Center our mind. Okay. And domo arigatou gozaimashita. Thank you so much.
Breelan Sensei, thank you so much for your class.
Sure.
One of the questions was, do you close your front foot when you thrust for the ski?
Do I what? Say that again?
Do you close, the question was, do you close your front foot or turn it in a way? Since you were talking about going to the side for the ski, does your front foot change its position?
My front foot is always oriented to the tip of my sword. If my tip of my sword is straight, my toe is straight. If it goes over here, I'll orient it that way.
Can you show us, please, with the bokken?
Sure.
Thank you so much.
So with the thrust, it's this way. So my foot is straight. My toe is forward, right? If for some reason I move my sword this way, I will orient this way. If I go this way, my foot will go this way. Whichever way my fingers go, my feet go, my hip go, my nose goes, everything. Because it's sort of like, and shoulder to hip, it's like a door. One can't go with the other, otherwise you're segmented. And you need to be, for me, I need to be a unit. My body needs to move all together. As my sword and jump. Hope that makes sense.
Great, thank you. And also, can you speak a little more to the expansion that you were talking about between your pinky and your thumb and kind of other places in your body and how you expand and take up more space?
Wow, that's a great question. Quite honestly, I started taking yoga because I could not find any more space. And you yoga practitioners understand that. So you can find it inside your body if you can't find it outside. So the thing about the extension is oftentimes when we raise our sword, there's a contraction. And this is for people if you don't need your space. I need every space I can get, so I will extend my pinky out. So my circle is not sacrificed. Extend. The other extension is sometimes we have this. You'd be surprised if you bring your scapula down, space that you accommodate the expansion in your back that you can create with your posture. If you're closed, you're limited. Huge opening. Now you've got a couple inches on your partner. So always looking for what posture can do for you. And your spine is tremendously flexible. And the hips are like Jamie said, the hips are a joint. You can manipulate it. The hatsuge you do with your jo, your hip and your shoulder should be following those waves.
Great, thank you so much. Lisa Klein Sensei also asked.
Oh, go ahead.
Lisa Klein Sensei also asked, is Iwama style weapons changing over time, or is it about following the late Saito Sensei's example?
We try to stay as traditional as possible. But it's an interesting thing because depending on the decade you've seen the lessons from Saito Sensei, he changes slightly because as your body ages, it just changes, right? There's a whole generation that would do a movement going down on one knee, and then a whole nother generation that doesn't do it because his knees started bothering him. And he altered it. So it's an interesting thing because it's really not different. It's just a little change.
Yeah.
The sword, the sword came from O Sensei. So the kumitachi that we do is O Sensei's. The jo work is more Saito Sensei's.
So do you think it's really great to adapt what's the weapons they're doing right for our bodies over time? How have you seen your own weapons evolve?
My circles are always bigger than everybody else's, and making them smaller is an interesting challenge, but I can kind of see it now because at first I needed them to be big so I can visualize them and then shrink them down. For me, my circles are big because I have to take my big uke and shrink him to my size. And I needed big circles for that at first. I'm starting to be more linear and learning how to irimi more, which is kind of fun, but it does take a commitment, as you know. So that's fun.
And you started on this track a little, but a major question is, how do you translate your weapons into your open hand Aikido work in practice?
Every part of my hand feels like the sword. So this blade here is coordinated with my hips. And whatever it does, it feels natural now. It was work before. It takes a mindset to coordinate it. I need all that coordination to bring my uke along. It's actually very good to be so painstaking about it because actually then you can shrink it. Then you can relax it. Then you can be a little different but still maintain it. So a lot of times when you see something that looks more formless, the form is hidden in there, or at least you can see the underlying form because you've been so ensconced in the form. So it's an interesting thing. And the jo too, for me, the length of the jo is the length of my arm. So I'm that long. I also use the jo as a leverage system so that I can leverage my partner, which is why space is so important for a smaller person especially.
And with kind of dealing with taller and smaller and bigger partners, how do you treat that arimi or versus tenshin? Like, do you want to be closer to your partner with someone taller?
Oh, yes.
Or how do you navigate that, not just your space, but the space you're interacting with?
Good question, very good question, because my entry were always timid. And my sensei would say, no, you have to be committed, you have to be as decisive as your sword strike. So you have to have a certain amount of bravery. When you know your center line so well, and believe me, I've learned it so hard because not only through Goto Sensei, but Sugawara Sensei did some Katori forms that were very close. And I would attend his seminars as well. They were amazing. The clarity of my center line is so huge that it's like a wall. It's not a line for me, it's a wall. And it gives you the confidence to enter because you know you have it. You know, not even within the striking distance, you have an instant to react, but the time feels almost languid. It's an odd thing.
Yeah.
A lot of it is confidence.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. And that's kind of a bigger, almost like philosophical thing to practice. But do you have any maybe more physical small tips for smaller people dealing with larger ukes?
Yes. Oh, enter obliquely. Always don't think of it as head on because you will crash. So always entering obliquely, even if it's 1 degree, because that's oblique, right? It doesn't have to be, it can't be head on. So don't interpret it like that. And even when you come in and you rimi, there is a tiny absorption that maybe you can't see yet, but you can mentally feel. So you aren't colliding, you're just inserting. I don't see it as a collision anymore. I used to see it as a collision. And once in a while I do collide, but I have big men in my dojo who are 6 feet tall and I get to practice with them. Find a good uke, he'll let you go, so just go for it. And it's actually great learning. And
on the flip side, what can those larger people do to be better training partners for whoever they encounter?
Oh, they're so sweet, aren't they? I love I used to avoid them like the plague, but now I like gravitate to them because they're just such a good study in body, right? If they wanted to help you, because you're shorter, they would bend their knees, of course, and connect. Because you don't talk to a child who's down here, like you get down and there's a feeling of connection. He doesn't have to, if you're 5 foot tall, he doesn't have to go all the way to 5 feet. 5'5" works good. That's enough connection, right? You just don't want to be 6'2" up here. So he can come to you. And you, as a smaller person, have to wait for the attack. You can't reach for it. You have to be patient enough to allow it. It's a great learning. And I feel for tall people because they, when they train with me, I know it's hard for them. And I feel sorry for their legs. And I call it, I'm the quadricep workout girl or whatever, because they do have to get lower. And it's hard for them. So I sympathize. I used to not. Now I understand. They have struggles as well.
Yeah, it's a lot of work. Breelan Sensei, thank you so much for your class and for sharing your experiences and tips. That was wonderful.
Thank you. It's fun. Very fun.